moving on, here in Britain, it's not often that National Health Service staff go out on strike due to the nature of their jobs. But this morning saw the first one since 1982. Hafsal Ahmed has been following this story.
It's been raining all day across England and Wales, but it hasn't stopped the resolve of thousands of NHS staff coming out to strike. Workers from 7 trade unions from across the British Isles stood outside the local hospitals protesting against what they say is the betrayal of Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt.
We need more money. We've got too many quango managers with no portfolios. Too many managers, no portfolios. Give us more money. We're understaffed, underpaid, overworked. Its NHS is now 21st century slave master, slave driver.
They're calling for a universal pay rise of 1% that was recommended by an independent NHS pay review body last year. It was supposed to come into effect in April. It's the first time in 32 years that staff from the health service have come out to strike, and for some workers from the Royal College of Midwives, it's the first time in their history. Staff stood outside for only 4 hours, mainly due to avoid disrupting services to the public. The unions had promised that patient care and patient safety would not be compromised, with emergency healthcare still running near to normal. Jeremy Hunt MP, the Secretary of State for Health, has responded that 55% of NHS workers were receiving a 3% pay rise through annual job progression-based rises, and that the country did not have the resources to go further than that. He also added if these pay rises were to be put into place, nurses would have to be laid off.
But what I've made very clear to the unions is that any discussion has to be within the bounds of what is going to be right for patients, and we have to make sure that we end up with a decision that isn't going to lead to nurses and frontline staff being laid off. And within the bounds of that, then we're always happy to discuss any of the details about the pay rise, about the increments, and about general pay and conditions.
A week-long action protest is in place tomorrow, where staff will only work to contract hours, a stark difference to normal working patterns, where overtime is the norm. Further protests are also planned to take place next week. That's if NHS bosses refuse to listen. Hafsal Ahmed, The Report, Islam Channel.
Well, with me to discuss this strike, Denise Linay from the Royal College of Midwives. And on Skype, we have Dr Sameer Mallick, who's an otolaryngologist and chief editor of Islamicate. Let me start with you, Denise. I mean, obviously, you've never been on strike before for many times. Why is this strike so important?
It's because we've got a pay review body in place that determines our pay. It makes recommendations, and for the first time in its 28-year history, the government has decided not to honour those recommendations. So what is now going to happen is, what the government has proposed, is that only 40% of NHS staff will get a 1% pay rise.
Now, people talk about this 1%. It's 1% of what? I mean, what is the average pay of a midwife at the moment?
The average pay is about 32,000. I mean, they start at a lot less than that. They start in their early 20s. This is a profession that's got a huge amount of responsibility. It's a very skilled profession. It's often got the life of a mother and a baby in their hands. And so it's a salary that is well earned.
Thank you. Let me ask Dr Sameer Mallick. I mean, Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, says that if they had to pay the 1%, then they'd lose the jobs of about 14,000 nurses. I mean, do you find that statement credible?
Well, I mean, certainly from a health economics perspective, it's. I'm not sure exactly how credible what Jeremy Hunt is actually saying. But what we do know for sure is that morale amongst staff across the board within the NHS is certainly an all-time low. Certainly with my discussions with nursing staff, nurses, jobs have been taken away, and nurses are overworked. They're not getting their coffee breaks. They're not getting their lunch breaks. They're working through their break time, and in real terms, their salary has actually gone down because of the pay freeze. So actually, those factors combined suggest that staff morale really is at an all-time low, and it simply can't go on like this.
Denise, let me come back to you. I mean, if there's a strike today and there's a work to rule for the next 4 days, what does a work to rule actually mean? How much disruption will there be for people?
Well, no disruption for women who only need maternity care. What we're saying is that during the next 4 days, if a midwife needs to do overtime, and often they do need to do overtime, that should be paid. And that also that they should have their breaks. We often have midwives working 12, 13 hours without taking a break. And what we're saying is that can't continue.
And is there a prospect that Jeremy Hunt will invite you back to the negotiating table? Or?
Well, we certainly hope so. That's what this is what it's all about. Is because this seems to be the only way that we can actually midwives can voice their anguish and their anger at what's going on. So yes, we've said, we've got an open door to Jeremy Hunt. We want to discuss.
I suppose nothing happens. Suppose he refuses to.
Well, we continue.
Next week you'll start another strike, or what?
Well, this is the first week of industrial action. Further industrial action will be planned depending on the outcome of what happens this week. So it could go on for quite a long time.
Hmm. I mean, how is this affecting Muslim doctors? I mean, are they a large proportion of the workforce that's on strike at the moment? I'm asking Sameer.
Yes, So Muslim doctors certainly make a significant proportion of the workforce. We have representative bodies within the UK, such as the British Islamic Medical Association, which represents Muslim doctors professionally. So we do make a significant proportion of doctors, and I think certainly from our perspective, we most certainly should be supporting our colleagues, our nursing colleagues, and I believe the radiographers are also going to be striking next week for similar reasons. And we really do need to support them because they're working with us to provide the quality service within the NHS, and their efforts need to be recognised, and we need to make sure fundamentally that they're getting that their efforts are recognised through this pay increase. But moreover, the issue of breaks, I think, is incredibly important because without having those breaks, if they're not getting rest away from the ward, if they're not getting rest away from the patients adequately, it's going to make conditions more dangerous for them to be working. Patient safety will become a significant factor. So this isn't just about pay; it's about patient safety as well. And I think as Muslim doctors, we need to recognise that and certainly come to the forefront of this debate.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you, Denise, for your contribution. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have now on this episode of The Report. I want to thank all of my guests on today's show, and thank you at home for watching. Do remember that you can keep up with us on Twitter by following @IslamChannel and tweet us by using #TheReport. We're back tomorrow at the same time. But for now, we'll leave you with some footage which comes from over the weekend in Manchester, where a multi-faith vigil was held in honour of the aid volunteer Alan Henning, who was killed by Islamic State fighters nearly 2 weeks ago after being kidnapped in Syria last year. Good night.